At some level, all of us who have placed our faith in Jesus desire to share about Him with others. And why wouldn't we? It's great news. But the word we use for this, evangelism, has a lot of baggage that comes with it. Why is that? Maybe it's because it never seems to go that well. Or we've seen it done so poorly by others and we've thought to ourselves, no way I'm doing that. But instead of just beating ourselves up, maybe we need to give ourselves permission to look at evangelism differently. If we take a step back and take a fresh look at the whole process, not from our perspective, but from the perspective of other people, we will see that traditional evangelism assumes a lot about the evangelizee. You know what? That's not even a real word. Let's just call him Dan. After all, he is a person, not a project. Traditional evangelism assumes a lot about Dan. We assume he's at a place in his life where he's open, he's interested, and he's just sitting around waiting on someone to come along with the perfect answers to his most pressing questions. So when it comes to evangelism, we're typically taught to make sure we're prepared with a bunch of correct answers to any of Dan's potential questions. We just need to remember that sometimes people are looking for more than just information. And with that in mind, what we'd like for you to pay attention to is where people actually are on their journey to faith. You see, what we've learned is that there are many thresholds a person goes through before seeking answers to their questions about God. We have come across a helpful resource that identifies 5 thresholds that people go through on their path to faith in Jesus, 3 of which begin way before the place modern evangelism typically starts. Each person on their journey to faith in Jesus is unique. They don't all fit into a particular mold. With that being said, we have noticed some common trends when it comes to people's journey to faith. So let's go back to Dan. Let's say Dan is your neighbor. He's married with 2 kids, he works at an accounting firm downtown, and he's pretty disinterested in God stuff. You know this, of course, because after you invited him to church a couple months ago, he started pretending to get phone calls every time he saw you in the driveway. Dan doesn't need your answers. At this point, he doesn't even have questions. Dan just needs to be able to trust a Christian. The first threshold for anyone is simply trusting a Christian. A recent study in the book Unchristian showed that 97% of 16 to 29-year-olds have a neutral or bad impression of evangelical Christians. That isn't something that we can ignore. So what's the best thing we can do for Dan at this point, given everything we know about his journey? Earn his trust. Don't worry about the answers yet. Don't have an agenda. Ask questions about his family. Take an interest in him. Just listen. So maybe the win for some of your group members is that you would be the first Christian that they have ever trusted. And that's a big deal. You've helped them take the first step on their journey. Once Dan gets to the place where he trusts you, it's only natural that he would cross through the second threshold, which is becoming curious about your faith. Maybe Dan starts to ask some questions. Celebrate that. I mean to yourself, of course. The best thing you can do for Dan at this point in the journey is help provoke his curiosity. And don't worry, you don't have to have all the answers. I don't know is fine. It lets Dan know that you have some of the same questions he does. Side note, Jesus was asked over 183 questions in the New Testament. How many times did he give explicit answers? Only 3. But how many questions did he ask in return? 307. Threshold 2 will probably be where most of your group members are, so our main role as leaders is to provoke their curiosity by asking questions. Now, a lot of times, Dan's curiosity will lead him to the next threshold, which is being open to change. This might actually be the hardest threshold for most people. Scratch that, it is. Change is difficult, for all of us. Dan may trust you and he may be really curious, but he just isn't open to change yet, and that's okay. The best thing you can do here is be patient. Don't give up on Dan if he's not fitting into your timeline. Trying to force the issue might actually do more harm than good at this point. Threshold 3 can be difficult, but hang in there, because our patience makes it easier for our group members to take the next step. If and when Dan becomes open to change, this openness will lead him to the 4th threshold, which we call seeking after God. And this is where traditional evangelism assumes most people start out. See what opportunities we'd miss if we just started out here with Dan? But hopefully now Dan realizes there's some implications to following Jesus. He may ask more questions. He may still have doubts about all of it. He may still try to cling to the life that he's used to. The best thing you and I can do for Dan at this point is let him know that he is not alone. You've been there. You have faith, and you have doubts. Side note, you know doubt is okay, right? Genuine faith includes doubt. Being real about your journey makes faith attractive to your group members. The fifth and last threshold in Dan's journey to faith is where he is ready to enter into a relationship with God. Okay, those were the 5 thresholds, and we know that's a lot of information, but we think this is important for you to know this. We believe that you, the leader, are much more important than any curriculum we could put in front of someone. As leaders, we seem to put this pressure on ourselves to be the one with all the answers. The tendency is to want to hurry people along in this process, but as leaders, it's more important that you journey with someone rather than try to take the journey for them. So as you lead your group, we hope you'll use these 5 thresholds as a guide to help you identify and respond based on where your group members are on their journey towards God.